Welcome to another edition of Lakeville City Council Wrap-Up. During this program, we will highlight the agenda items presented to the Lakeville City Council at their March 16th, 2015 meeting. First highlighted item on the agenda is item number 7, public hearing to consider improvements to Kensington Boulevard. And to provide the background information on this agenda item is Operation and Maintenance Engineer Monica Heil.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Tonight is the public hearing for the Kensington Boulevard Improvement Project. As you recall, the project spans from 205th Street down to a point just south of 210th Street where the County Road 70 improvements terminated along Kensington Boulevard a few years back. The project was initiated as a part of the city's pavement management program, where the city's streets are rated based on their condition and used to develop a plan for capital improvements related to the roadways. The City Council authorized the preparation of a feasibility report for this project back on December 1st of last year, and a public hearing was ordered this past February 17th for the project. The project includes reclamation of the existing street surface along with spot curb and gutter replacement along the length of the roadway, and it will result in the installation of a new pavement section that will serve to reduce some of the pavement tenting issues that currently exist along Kensington Boulevard during the winter months. In addition, the street lights are proposed to be replaced within the business campus area of the project. Those lights were reclaimed from a previous project, reinstalled. They've reached the end of their useful life and be replaced as a part of the improvements to Kensington Boulevard. And while there's no water main break history along Kensington Boulevard, we did look at the condition of the soils in the area, as we do with a number of our street reconstruction projects, and it was determined that the soils were moderately corrosive. And while there are no break histories in the area, we do propose to install cathodic protection along the length of the project to reduce the frequency of the water main breaks and extend the useful life of the water main pipe in conjunction with the street improvements. The estimated project costs are $898,240. Of that, approximately $713,000 will be funded using city CIP funds. Another $63,300 will be funded using city utility funds to cover that portion of the cathodic protection or the water main improvements associated with the project. And special assessments in the amount of $121,600 will fund the remaining balance of the project. The assessments are estimated on a front-foot basis for property zoned for commercial and industrial use, and the estimated assessments for this portion of Kensington Boulevard are $52.16 per front foot. Those properties with driveway access onto Kensington Boulevard would be specially assessed as a part of the project, and it would be a 20-year assessment term. In accordance with the city's assessment policy, 40% of the street and storm sewer improvement costs are specially assessed to the benefiting property owners. The other 60% is funded using general tax dollars. Again, commercial and industrial properties are assessed on a front foot basis, and the water main improvements will not be assessed. Those will be funded using water operating funds. Just looking briefly at our project schedule, we met last month to set the public hearing date, which is tonight, March 16th. If the City Council orders the project and we move forward with plans and specifications, we would propose to open bids on April 24th, after which we'd come back to the Council on May 4th to declare the costs and also set an assessment hearing for the project, which would be conducted on June 1st. After the assessment hearing, and if the Council decides to award the contract, that would also take place on June 1st, and construction would take place sometime between June and September of 2015. And special assessments would be certified to the county yet later this year. With that, the Council can conduct a public hearing and also consider a resolution ordering the improvements and authorizing the preparation of plans and specifications for the project. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that the Council may have.
Item number 7 was approved by the Lakeville City Council. Next highlighted item on the agenda is item number 8, public hearing to consider improvements to Hamburg Avenue. And once again, to provide the background information on this agenda item is Operation and Maintenance Engineer Monica Heil.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is again, as you mentioned, a public hearing for the Hamburg Avenue Improvement Project, which, as you recall, extends from Lakeville Boulevard down to 220th Street. And again, this project was initiated as a part of the city's pavement management program in recognition of the condition of the pavement along Hamburg Avenue. In addition, we also recognize that there were a number of existing drainage issues along the ditch sections that abut Hamburg Avenue. The council authorized the preparation of a feasibility report for this project back on December 1st, and a public hearing was ordered for this project on February 17th. The street improvements for Hamburg Avenue include mill and overlay improvements. And as we initially looked at this project, we had considered reclamation, but after further evaluation and looking at the existing pavement rating, we realized that mill and overlay was a more viable solution to some of the existing issues that can be found along Hamburg Avenue. So it is proposed to route and seal the existing cracks along this section of Hamburg Avenue, and also installing a leveling course to address some of the rutting that's taken place due to the heavy truck traffic. In addition, shoulder rehabilitation is proposed to address some of the areas where trucks have utilized portions of the road outside of the paved surface area to reestablish that shoulder. As I mentioned, drainage concerns were a large issue for a number of property owners along this particular section of Hamburg Avenue. There is a number of sections that have standing water issues. Some of these issues are due to crushed culverts under driveways that you can see as shown in this picture here. Other issues exist because the sediment has been deposited within the drainage channel in the ditch there over the years. We would propose to replace those crushed culverts and also remove the sediment that has deposited within the ditch areas as a part of this project to improve drainage. In addition, we are also working with the Vermilion River Watershed District to obtain grant dollars to construct some drainage improvements that would not only help to draw the water away from the surface of the ditch, but also to improve the quality of water entering into South Creek, which is at the north end of the project. The estimated project costs are $579,255. Of that, $288,000 will be funded using city CIP funds. It is estimated that Vermilion River Watershed District will contribute approximately $116,000 to the ditch improvements, which are not proposed to be assessed, and special assessments, which would fund the culvert replacement and also the surface improvements. Those are estimated at $174,971. The assessments are again calculated on a front foot basis for industrial and commercial properties. Along Hamburg Avenue, these assessments are estimated at $19.08 per front foot. It is proposed to assess those properties with driveway access onto Hamburg Avenue, and in accordance with the city's assessment policy, as this is a mill and overlay project, the assessment term would be 10 years for the Hamburg Avenue improvements. Street reconstruction project costs are typically assessed at 40% of the storm sewer and street improvements only. And as I mentioned, those ditch improvements that we are working on to improve the water quality are proposed to be funded using Vermilion River Watershed District grant dollars and not assessment or CIP dollars. And again, it is proposed to assess these properties on Hamburg Avenue on a front foot basis in accordance with the city's assessment policy. The schedule for Hamburg Avenue is very similar to the schedule for Kensington Boulevard. We're here tonight to conduct the public hearing and would propose to open bids on April 24th if the council orders the project. We would then declare the cost to the council at the May 4th meeting, have the assessment hearing on June 1st, potentially awarding a construction contract that evening, and then having construction span during the summer months. In putting together the memo for your council packets, I noted that I had not received any calls from any property owners. After I completed the memo, I did receive one call from the gentleman that manages the ConAgra site. They have shipping that runs out of that building 24/7. And his concerns primarily had to deal with access. He actually did not have any questions about the assessments or the project, strictly to do with access. So we would propose, once the project is bid and a contractor selected, meeting with all the property owners along this section of Hamburg Avenue, getting a better idea of what their shipping and delivery schedules look like so that we can best accommodate those businesses during our construction season. And with that, we can look to conduct the public hearing for the project, and the council can consider ordering a resolution, consider a resolution ordering the improvements and authorizing the preparation of plans and specifications. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions the council has.
Item number 8 was approved by the Lakeville City Council. Next highlighted item on the agenda is item number 9, resolution calling a public hearing on proposed assessments for improvement project 15-02. And to begin a series of presentations, here's Public Works Director Chris Petrie.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I don't know that I can come anywhere close to what Monica's done over the last two presentations, but I'll try. First, project location, just to remind the Council of this. It's, of course, west of Cedar Avenue, south of County Road 46, east of Highview, kind of in that northeast corner of the city is where this year's street reconstruction project is. Again, a little project background. I know we've been in front of the council a number of times on this project, but first off, we had the first neighborhood meeting back in June of 2014, authorized the feasibility report, that is the council did in July of 2014, accepted the feasibility report and set the project public hearing in October of 2014. We held the public hearing in November of 2014 and ultimately proceeded to prepare plans and specifications and solicit bids. We did open bids on March 6th for this project. Now I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Heil to talk about the project specifics.
Thank you, Mr. Petrie. Well, as you all know, we are proposing to replace all the water main as a part of the street reconstruction project. The reason for that initially was the break history and knowing that we had ongoing maintenance issues within the neighborhood. Upon testing the soils in the area, it was determined that they were all corrosive, and so it was a matter of time before we had more and more water main issues within the area. So as a part of the project, it is proposed to replace all of the iron water main pipe with plastic pipe. This would include the changing out of all hydrants and replacing all services to properties up to their water shutoff. In addition, we will completely reconstruct all of the streets within the neighborhood. In our soils analysis, we did determine that the soils, in addition to being corrosive, were less than ideal for building streets upon. And so we are going to be putting in larger and more structurally sound street sections as a part of the project. This would include the complete replacement of concrete curb and gutter within the project area, as well as some spot sidewalk replacement in order to facilitate the replacement of water main services. Storm sewer enhancements are proposed throughout the project area. In addition to the storm sewer, which would typically be the underground pipe system with the catch basins installed in the street sections, we are also proposing to install drain tile along the entire length of the project. With that, we would stub services to each property within the project area, offering those folks who currently have their sump pumps discharging to their lawns and to their grass to make an underground connection to the city's public drain tile system to get all of that water off of the surface and underground. Griffin Trail is also proposed to receive some traffic calming improvements as a part of the project. Griffin Trail between Cedar Avenue and Grinnell Way is a section of street that not only has pavement issues, but we also receive a number of calls from concerned residents regarding vehicle speeds in that area. And so similar to what we did along Flagstaff Avenue, we would propose to narrow portions of Griffin Trail, which right now, as you see it, is constructed as 46 feet wide from face of curb to face of curb. We would narrow that in a manner such that strategically throughout the block there would be points where there would be travel lanes for vehicles and right adjacent to that bump outs that would serve to narrow the perceived width of the street and has been effective in reducing vehicle speeds. So as a part of the Griffin Trail improvements, we would be installing those. And when we talk about the improvements, we need to talk a little bit about the phasing of the project. Because of the size and the scale of the work that's going to be taking place, we needed to break the project into 2 contracts and 2 construction seasons. So what you're seeing up there in blue is the work that is going to be completed during the 2015 construction season. That's going to include the water main replacement and the reconstruction of the streets. What you see in purple will be constructed in 2016. And Griffin Trail, that street that I mentioned with the bump outs that are proposed, that would be constructed in 2016 as one of the last streets to be reconstructed with the project, so we don't have heavy truck traffic traveling on it the duration of construction. Bids were opened on March 6th. The feasibility estimate for the project that was prepared last fall was $23,420,000. After bids were received, the final project costs were determined to be $23,227,000. So a small overall reduction in the estimate that was prepared last fall. When we look at how that changes some of the funding sources for the project, property taxes contributing to the project costs have been slightly reduced, going down from about $9.8 million to $9.56 million. Storm sewer assessments and street and storm sewer assessments, have also been slightly reduced from about $6.379 million to about $6.365 million. The water operating funds have increased based on the bid results that we received, as well as the sanitary sewer funds, which would include the replacement of some sanitary sewer manholes that were found to be deficient, as well as some external workings to the manholes that will address some of our inflow and infiltration issues within our sanitary sewer system. Proposed assessments decreased slightly. The estimate proposed with the feasibility report last fall was for a single-family unit assessment rate of $8,116.46. Based on the bids that were received, the final assessment amount will be $8,098.24 per single-family unit. For those townhomes and duplexes within the property, within the project area, the feasibility estimate was $4,058.23. That has been reduced to $4,049.12. The special assessments with the project will be phased similar to the construction. For those properties that will see construction taking place adjacent to their property in 2015, their assessments will be certified to the county at the end of 2015, and the first payment for those special assessments will be due with property taxes payable in 2016. For those residents that will not see construction taking place on their street until next year, in 2016, their assessments will not be certified till the county until the end of 2016, and therefore their first payment will be due with property taxes payable in 2017. The city's assessment policy states that residents can pay these assessments without interest during that first year. For those folks living within Phase 1, we'll be having the assessment hearing on April 6th. Notices will be mailed out for that assessment hearing at the end of the week. We will give them detailed information about when they can pay these assessments off without interest, and residents will also be given the option for either a 20-year or a 29-year assessment period. As you recall, 20 years is the standard assessment period for any of our reclamation or reconstruction projects. Due to the size and the scope of this project, however, for the first time, we are offering a 29-year assessment period to those residents that choose it. For residents within Phase 2, we will also conduct their assessment hearing on April 6th of this year. However, their assessments can be paid without interest until November 15th of 2016, and they will also be given the option for a 20 or a 29-year assessment period. As we look at the project schedule moving forward, we're here tonight to declare the costs and set the assessment hearing date. If you agree with the assessment hearing date of April 6th, we'll mail those notices later this week, conduct the assessment hearing on April 6th, and also potentially award a construction contract and allow construction to take place. We have on here May of 2015, but if weather permits, after awarding the contract, we would consider allowing work to start sooner on Phase 1. The assessments for Phase 1 would be certified at the end of this year, and assessments for Phase 2 would be certified at the end of next year. One item that I don't have listed in the project schedule, but I should note, is a neighborhood meeting for the project. This would be the second neighborhood meeting. Mailed notices were sent out to residents last week, inviting them to a meeting on the evening of Wednesday, March 25th. City staff will give residents an informal opportunity to ask questions, look at plan sets, and meet some of our field staff ahead of the assessment hearing on April 6th. And with that, Council can consider a resolution calling for a public hearing on the proposed assessments for City Improvement Project 1502, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Item number 9 was approved by the Lakeville City Council. Next highlighted item on the agenda is item number 10, Ordinance Amending Various Chapters of the Lakeville City Code. And to provide the information on this agenda item is City Planner Darrell Morey.
Good evening again. I'm pleased to present the Planning Commission and Planning Department staff's recommended amendments to City Code and more specifically the zoning and subdivision ordinances. This is something that we do on an annual basis. Staff and the Planning Commission basically in the course of our day-to-day activities, processing of development applications, feedback from developers, the general public. We keep track of a list of items for discussion with the Planning Commission in terms of consideration of amendments to the ordinance to bring the ordinance maybe more up to date with various aspects of development technology, or just to fix some amendments that might have happened in the past or some ordinances in the past that had unintended consequences. We have a number of changes. I'm going to just briefly highlight those for you. The first is related to Title VII, which is actually just a city code amendment that does not require a public hearing. That was considered by the Planning Commission also, but that is related to gravel mining and extraction operations and requirements. And as you may recall, there is no established hours of operation for gravel mining operations that we have. It is at the discretion of the City Council. Given a previous request that we had a little over a year and a half ago for 24/7 hours of operation, staff felt it might be prudent to at least list hours of operation in that section of the city code that would give anybody who is interested in establishing gravel mining operations a time frame from which they would work within, but also gives them the option to seek extensions of that, again, at the discretion of the City Council. The hours that are proposed by this city code amendment are 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. Monday through Friday, and that pretty much matches the city code in terms of the nuisance hours of operation. In other words, the daytime hours of operation, whereby the decibel levels are allowed at a higher rate versus nighttime operations.
Just a quick question, does that include rock crushing or just the mining operation?
It would be all aspects of the mining operation. Moving on to the subdivision ordinance, it was noted that the findings of fact for variances in the subdivision ordinance did not match those of the zoning ordinance. As you may recall, a couple of years ago, there were some changes in state statute to the criteria to review various zoning, like rezonings, conditional use permits, variances, these types of things, but specifically for variances in terms of the, as it relates to the zoning ordinance. Subdivision ordinances overseen a little bit differently in state statute, but still it was felt by staff, and the city attorney's office concurred that we should have criteria that are similar in both of those ordinances. It helps in terms of ease of applicants' understanding of the process, and also city staff and the Planning Commission and City Council as they review these types of requests. So that is basically just more of a housekeeping item such that the criteria are similar. We modified the definition of front yard, again, to be more clear. It's to add some clarity. That was at the request of building inspection staff as they review requests for building permits or housing additions on yards, especially those that are corner lots. We clarified the wording for the deck setback exceptions. As you may recall, this was something that was brought forward to the City Council in January, and it was based on an appeal that was filed to the city staff's interpretation of that section of the ordinance. At the January 20th meeting, the City Council tabled action on that amendment to allow this process to play out. Again, this is something that was discussed with the Planning Commission, and we have a recommendation related to that. So the amendment that was proposed on January 20th would be superseded and replaced by the ordinance that's in front of you this evening. So that would be a moot at this point. We've made a couple of changes that are related to changes in the building code. In January, there was changes to the building code in terms of, for accessory buildings, the size of the accessory building that required a building permit. It previously was anything over 120 square feet. That's been increased to 200 square feet, so we've needed to adjust the zoning ordinance to reflect that change. And similarly with fences, building code changed for a building permit requirement on fences to anything over 7 feet. It used to be anything over 6 feet, so we've made adjustment to the ordinance again to reflect that, and that's at the request of the Building Inspections Department. We've made a number of tweaks in terms of the section of the zoning ordinance related to signs. First, in relation to temporary signs, we've increased the number of days that temporary signs are allowed in a calendar year versus a 12-month period, easier to track. That increase went from 42 days to 60 days to be more reflective of the requests that we've been receiving for temporary signs. Also, we've increased the size of temporary signs in the freeway corridor district from 50 square feet to 100 square feet, and that reflects the increase in the permanent signage that's allowed in the freeway corridor district, again, because of its proximity to the freeway. So we made that adjustment as well. We made an adjustment for window signs just to clarify that a permit is not required for window signs. And we also, again, this is in relation to some feedback we've been receiving from tenants of multi-tenant commercial buildings, asking if they can have more than one wall sign, provided that the cumulative size of the wall signs does not exceed the allowance in that district. And typically for a C3 district, that allowance is 100 square feet. So instead of having one 100 square foot wall sign, they could have two 50 square foot wall signs or any variation thereof. And then finally, in relation to signs, we did make a clarification under the prohibited signs section that signs attached to public fences would fall under the prohibited sign category. Related to deck setbacks, that's probably the biggest issue that was before the Planning Commission, at least as part of the discussion on clarifying the deck setback exceptions at the January 20th meeting. The staff, notably our planning consultant, Mr. Licht, and then Planning Commission in discussion at a work session, had a good discussion with that. We had input from a couple of property owners that were looking at that exception or a reduction, at least in terms of the setback allowance for decks in the RS4 district. And the proposal is to reduce the setback from 30 feet to 20 feet. And that is based on an analysis of the typical lot depth in an RS4 district versus an RS3 district. There's no minimum lot depth requirement. However, there is minimum lot size and minimum lot width. Developers typically establish the lots at the minimum, so when you do the math, for an RS4 district, typically the lot depth is going to be 120 feet. That's utilizing the 70-foot minimum lot width and then the minimum lot size requirement. For the RS3 district, and I know my particular lot falls within that category, the typical depth is 130 feet. So there's a 10-foot difference generally in terms of the typical depth that you have for a lot in the RS3 versus the RS4 district. And based upon that, staff and the Planning Commission felt it was appropriate to allow in the RS4 district only a reduction in terms of the deck setback from 30 feet to 20 feet. Now, this would apply to decks that are elevated greater than 30 inches above grade. Those that are 30 inches or less above grade would still be subject to the setback exceptions from the previous section of the ordinance, section 17, which would allow the rear yard setback to go down as low as 10 feet. So this would just be the standard setback going from 30 to 20 feet. And then finally, the last item of the amendment was to clarify an exception or an averaging, if you will, of setbacks that is allowed in the Shoreland Overlay District. It's something that's been in that district section for a number of years, where when you have development or existing houses on both sides of a lot, sometimes you have some older non-conforming setbacks The typical setback requirement, for example, for our recreation development lakes such as Marion and Orchard, it's 75 feet from the ordinary high water level. But sometimes you have houses that are set back less than that, and if you have a house in the middle of those that's looking to do an addition is held to the 75-foot setback, they could be set back quite a bit different from the OHWL than those houses adjacent to it. What we did was not to necessarily change that requirement per se, but to make it clearer to follow, not only for residents that are looking up the information online and trying to understand it, but also for staff in overseeing it. The one change that does occur, however, is right now that would allow a setback to be reduced to as low as 37.5 feet. That's 1/2 of the required setback. At the recommendation of the DNR, they're requesting that it be no less than 50 feet. So in other words, you could go less than 75, but no lower than 50 feet, again, depending upon the houses on either side of that particular lot. So it's more of a clarification, but it is bumping up the minimum setback in those exception requirements from 37.5 to 50. The amendment was discussed by the Planning Commission at their February 5th work session. This was the first Planning Commission work session following the January 20th council meeting when action on a smaller amendment was tabled and directed by the council for discussion by the Planning Commission and staff. The Planning Commission directed staff to set a public hearing to formally consider the proposed amendment. That was done at the March 5th Planning Commission meeting. At that meeting, there was one resident that did speak, mainly to gain clarification, again, on the RS4 district's deck setback proposal under that, under the amendment. That particular person that spoke was very comfortable with the 20-foot setback that was being proposed. And the Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of the amendment, which is before you this evening. Staff also is recommending approval and also adoption of the summary ordinance for publication, and I can stand for questions.
Item number 10 was approved by the Lakeville City Council. Well, those were the highlighted items presented to the council at their March 16th, 2015 meeting. If you have any questions or comments regarding these agenda items, please feel free to call City Hall. The number is 952-985-4400. Thanks for watching this edition of Lakeville City Council Wrap-Up.